My name is Sinead. I am a futurist, which means I can't predict the future. But what I can do is try to reduce some uncertainty around what we can know about it, what's structurally knowable, and what is fundamentally unknowable. And I have about 9 minutes to take you to this very interesting place called the future of work. And when we think about the future of work, we often think about it through the lens of which jobs is AI going to replace. But there's actually a much deeper systems question we need to be asking. What system of work are we entering into? We've spent the last 150 years or so wiring our workforce around this concept of the job, right? And a job title is essentially, it's a container that tells you what type of work is going to fit inside of it. And it tells you the skills you can expect that person to have, and it tells you about the autonomy you can make decisions with. That is essentially the essence of a job. And when we think about what that's wired into, right, despite the fact that our economies got more complex over time, we still anchored to the stability of the idea of a role. And things moved slowly enough in an industrial era that we could stack those job containers laterally and form what we think of now as the career ladder, because we could make this assumption that usually held that your experience stacked vertically over time. The more time you spent in a function, the more patterns you saw, the more problems you've solved within that domain. The challenge with artificial intelligence is this is the first time in history that the system that underpins these workflows learns, evolves, can take on complexity, coordinates, can make decisions. The system itself looks different every 6, 12, 24 months. So how do you put a static workflow on top of a system that itself transforms over time? So work itself starts to become much more fluid. And then we can think about this through an example, right? So maybe today, someone is a financial analyst, and they're building different financial models, and they're using that to make informed strategic decisions for the firm. In 12 months, maybe that person is architecting some agentic workflows and directing AI agents to solve much more complex financial problems and using their judgment to weigh trade-offs for the company. Now, is that still an analyst? Or is that something different? Is that more of a financial strategist? And then 24 months after that, that person's going to be doing different things. And is it still the same person then when that role looks entirely different? So it's not that work is going away in its entirety in the AI age. It's that jobs as a container for work no longer hold when the system underneath that container transforms over time. And we're starting to see this fluidity of the workforce, right, where jobs come and they go depending on problems of the moment. Do we remember the prompt engineer and how that was all over LinkedIn, and we needed people with deep linguistic skills along with some domain expertise, and that came to solve a certain problem, and then it kind of went away. And then now we're hearing a lot more about the agentic workflow designer or the agentic workflow architect. We have a specific problem, and we need a certain set of skills to help achieve that outcome. That is somewhat how we can start to envision the fluidity of the future of work, where jobs and their stability were a specific chapter of the industrial age. But this then calls into question the idea of the organization. So what becomes of this org chart, right, where we assume roles are static? And in the old org chart, or the ones that bigger companies still use, it makes this assumption that seniority equals capability. But in a world where AI is going to reshape the tasks and the knowledge required and the skills required at such a rapid pace, can we still guarantee that historical experience is the best use case to solve that problem? Or is capability going to become much more about adaptability and your ability to frame problems? So we are likely going to see a compression of the org chart in the age of AI, where we don't move vertically, we move laterally, where it's not necessarily about seniority, it's about pairing based on skills regardless of tenure. And that's a very different type of organization. And the organization itself, when it's underpinned by this system that learns, evolves, and can do different things, is going to morph and transform alongside of it. So the idea of the static organization is also going to be a chapter of human history that has come and is now going. And this has profound implications for many of us, but especially for builders. What economy are you building for? Right? What assumptions are you making about the enterprise if you're building B2B? Do you think your products are landing in divisions and functions? Are you building something for the marketing team or the sales team? Because those distinct functions might not exist when the org chart collapses and we start to move much more laterally. And this is I'm just looking at the context of work, but this is going to be true of markets and of consumers, where we start to bleed into different types of functions and activities and wants and needs. And what about if you are a worker here today, or maybe you're in college, and we hear a lot about, right, the end of the career ladder, or what it means to be a new hire or trying to jump on that career ladder. And we have to remember that we're at this strange point in time where the old shape of the workforce is closing and the new one is just starting to take shape. And so it's going to be much less about historical experience and job titles and much more about your ability to learn. So if you're a worker, you have to think about yourself as a mini organization with a bundle of skills that learns and adapts over time, and you can apply those skills to solve outcomes. So less about the title and more about the skills that you've acquired underneath it. And when we zoom out, the entire future of work, I mean, we can see some of the shape of it, right? It's going to be much more fluid. The idea of job titles will come and they'll go, and the organization will become a system that evolves and changes over time. But how this actually evolves, right, how this actually takes shape is still up for grabs. And so that means there is a design space that's open when it comes to the future of work. What do we want from this workforce? What do we want from the future of work? And that's a question we don't spend enough time answering. We anchor our vision of the future to the past, right, to the Industrial Revolution era of static jobs and org charts. But can we do better than that? If we were to design the workforce from scratch, what would we do differently? And that is the moment we are in today, and it shouldn't be a question that a single company answers or a single government answers. That is a question that everybody involved in the social contract deserves to answer. Thanks so much.